like, nope, I take my boat out on the water and I eat bagels for breakfast.
Yeah, not bad. Thank God.
Sean, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Chris, are you recording already?
Yeah, we're going.
Uh, oh, oh. Let's get started then. Yeah. Hey guys, welcome back to the flip side. Today we are talking about that you should be taking your injuries probably more seriously than you do. I would like to premise there are probably instances where people moan and groan about every small injury they get. Don't be that person. But for the injuries that could seem serious, you should probably treat them like they're serious. And I believe Chris has a unfortunately good example of these things. Chris, would you like to give a quality example here?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say I absolutely hate this episode. Uh, I this is the hardest thing for me ever is to take my injuries seriously, and it's like a combination of like always grinding through the pain and like because I train a lot and I don't sleep a lot, so I'm just kind of always in pain, and I'm just like I'm gonna
Yeah.
grind through it, and then you get like a real injury and I just don't know how seriously I should take it. Like, it's not worse than the pain of like my muscle soreness that I'm usually in. It's just
Yeah.
another soreness until it becomes something where I'm like, oh, my knee doesn't work. Like, I'm trying to move my leg and it's not moving. It's like that's
Uh,
so I always push it too far, and I don't know what it is. I don't ever take it seriously, or I don't listen to. I can't tell the difference between good and bad pain, or like whether it's like muscular soreness or like ligament soreness. I don't know,
yeah.
and like I think that might also have to do with the fact that I take really good care of my body outside of like the actual training. So like I do the ice baths, then I do the heat, and then I do the stretching. So then I'm like, okay, it's actually not that painful. And then it's like, but it's still serious. So because I manage the inflammation, like I feel like maybe that has something to do with it too.
Okay.
But yeah, overall I hate it because then even when I do know where I go like, oh, I just got out of, like, for example, when I had my ankle surgery, I just had an ankle surgery and then I was like, oh well, I could get back into tricks pretty quick, and then I couldn't. like it was, and then
Oh,
I had like a bunion surgery for my big toes, so they had to break my big toes and realign them. Same thing. I jumped right
uh,
back into wrestling when I got into a boot. I was like, it's fine. I'll just like
God,
I'll tread on it light. And I did, and I was like,
that'll be fine.
it hurt. Wait, was that from a comedy special? Because I think I just
No,
watched that one. Oh, okay.
just oh my God, Chris. Oh
But
Jesus.
anyway, yeah. So that's just my struggle. Is like I don't know. I like to just jump right back in, and I know it's bad. So I hate this episode. But yeah, I do think that you need to take your injury seriously because I know that when I get older, it's all going to come back to haunt me. And right now, I'm dealing with like an even worse kind of injury. I have some gross, nasty thing on my arm from training.
What
Because
is that?
yeah, it's like I think it's ringworm, but I don't know. And here's the thing. I'm so pissed because I went to go to the doctor and then they were like, "Oh, I think maybe it's from an ingrown hair or something." And I was like, "Shut up." I was like, "Look at that with your fucking eyes. That is not like just look at it. If I tell you I train jujitsu 5 times a week and you look at that and I go, I did not have a cut previously to having this, you're gonna tell me that's an ingrown hair? No,
Yeah,
you're wrong.
no.
You're wrong." And so they sent me home with nothing. And I was like, no. And so now I have to wait for it to get worse before I go in to get it treated, which sucks. And that means that I have to wait even longer to train, which sucks even more. So I'm frustrated.
Yeah,
So
I would be
that's
too.
why, but I have to take it seriously. It could be staph infection also. So I can't
Oh
be,
no.
I can't be training with other people, and I also can't be pushing myself,
No.
because that's just going to make it worse. So I have to take care of it, and it's the worst kind of injury because the rest of my body feels great and
Yeah, that Jesus.
fine. And that's something else that used to happen to me all the time. I would train and I would get cuts on the bottom of my toes, from just walking so much and training so much that I would be pushing off my toes so much, and
Yep.
it opens up cuts. And so, yeah, that's the other thing is like I have to not train because I have a cut on my toe. Like this is the dumbest
Oh,
thing.
that's stupid.
But if you don't let it heal, it's going to be there forever. You're going to have constant infections, all these things. And then But yeah, I mean, it goes for any type of injury, I think.
No, that's true. And I feel like partly from a coaching perspective, looking back on certain things, like I have an issue with dealing with what I consider small injuries, like jamming an ankle, rolling an ankle, jamming your wrist, like hitting your finger the wrong way, just like dropping on your hips on the bars, so on and so forth. Just some minor gymnastics injuries. I usually shrug it off for the most part.
It's a really gray line, to be honest, because you can also train on trampoline in between, and you don't know if that's making it worse or better, or if it's even worth it. It's really a gray line.
Hey, if you enjoy our content and you want to show some support, make sure you follow us on Spotify and Instagram. Our Instagram tag is the_flip_side_podcast. Just make sure to go on there. Just shout out like old episodes that you liked, anything about the new episodes. You can comment on any of them. We would really appreciate it. And if you do end up wanting to go a step further, just become a supporter. All you have to do is follow the link in the description in any of our episodes that we've published. And you can also go under the About section in our Spotify homepage.
You can do as little as 99 cents a month. Any amount that you guys support us is going to help us build a better podcast and help build better trickers around the world.
And there's times where I don't think it's serious because I'm like, oh, if people have ever met me in real life, that they know that my ankles crack a lot. And that's because I've jammed them God knows how many times because of doing gymnastics. So like to me, I'm like, oh, you jam an ankle, you can just walk off, you'll be fine. Like just go train go train swings, go train something else. Like you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes I tend to do that with some kids, or like sometimes I'll let them ice, but for the most part in my head, I'm like, they'll be fine. Just walk it off. Like take 5-10 minutes, stretch it out a little bit, try to keep going. Like you'll be fine. And nothing's really come from that except for I feel like some of the kids that I've trained have slowly, like maybe not quite as often, voiced how much it hurts. But I know the difference between like when you roll it doing a skill, not just like you land and you roll your ankle that little bit and it just like pops back like it's fine.
Yeah.
There's a big difference when you're doing a skill and you're dropping 4-5 feet and you actually land on it sideways. That's not rolling an ankle.
Yeah.
That's landing wrong, and that is going to hurt your ankle. And I know the difference, and I'm like, I don't think they feel comfortable because they're like, oh, I just rolled my ankle. I'm like, no, that's not the same thing.
Well, did you see how Shosei screwed his ankle up? This is like I think almost a year and a half ago. He was doing I think he was cooling down after a session, or maybe he was warming up, or maybe he was screwing around. I don't know, but he's just a video of him working on basic skills. And then he did a Webster and he jumped up, planted his foot wrong. So his foot is sideways and still pushed off it for a Webster. Imagine Shosei power going into a sideways ankle. No, I think he tore a tendon and then he had it in a boot for a while. So
and that's the thing, you would want to take it seriously because you might approach it like, oh, I just rolled my ankle. Like, it's fine. Like, it hurts right now because this is when I'm experiencing the pain and, like, this is when it's first happening. You're like, oh, fine. And then you don't treat it seriously. And then it just gets exponentially worse so much faster. But you just got to take that second and be like, okay, what did I do? How did I hurt it? Okay, I hurt it doing this. And I actually landed on it like this. Okay, I should probably not do anything.
It's interesting because I need to like treat myself like I treat my students. So if my students get hurt in a certain way, I go, okay, we're going to completely avoid these. Let's work on this instead. When I do that to myself, I'm like, oh, I can work around it and I can like tread that line. But it's like, if I was really teaching it, I wouldn't tread the line at all. And so that's interesting. And I mean, I did the same thing with my hip abductor tear. I gave it a week. I got it stronger again. I started drinking. Everything was good. And then, I just pushed it too hard, too consistently. Like, I feel like I was doing it correctly, but I was doing it correctly too much, which was incorrect. Like I was following its limitations and I was listening to it, but then I just did it so much where I was like, oh, this is what I'm allowed to do. Then that's all I'm going to do. And it was like, fuck you, you're not doing shit now. And so then I had to take a month off basically. So that is very, very crappy. And if I hadn't done that, I'd probably be back to everything much sooner.
Oh yeah. And like, there's times where it's hard to judge too. Because sometimes it's just like an accidental landing. Like we had one kid, and and as we like to know, I really try not to name names. I'm gonna talk about the situation. If someone knows about it, I'm sorry. But we had one kid that I call it a brain fart, where you just like forget what you're doing and your body just like stops for no reason. He's moving, so it's really weird. They were doing round off back handspring and back tuck onto a mat, and like in the middle of doing the round off back handspring, they did the round off, stopped, like brain turned off, was just kind of there, and they were like leaning backwards and like holding their position. I'm like, that's not normal. And at like the last possible second to try to get out of back handspring, all of a sudden like remembered and like jumped back and like hit their wrists weird, and like I thought they hurt their neck and like a bunch of other things. Come to find out, she like breaks her wrist, and I'm like,
oh wow.
Okay. Did not see that, because like the way that they hit, I was like, I guess it makes sense if I'm like looking back at it and like I think about it a little bit harder and like maybe where she hit, but in the moment I was like, yeah, her wrist is probably gonna hurt because she probably jammed her wrist, but I really didn't think it was that serious. And those are cases where it's very hard of like, you gotta kind of go with understanding your pain scale better and like understand when it's good to go see a doctor for things and when things may just be like a small sprain and you can just like normally heal it by itself. Because most breaks, unfortunately, like it's better to make sure that it's a break, because if you don't and then you start doing stuff with it, it can move things where they're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And potentially create bone spurs. Right, Chris?
Yeah, that can happen. That's what I did. I had the bone spurs. That's why my ankle was so bad. I grew bone spurs, then the bone spurs broke off, and then I kept training, and then I grew new bone spurs, and then those floating bone spurs got caught in between my existing bone spurs, and then it twisted my ankle and tore a tendon, and then I had to go in and get all that fixed at once.
This man had no ankle mobility, and I have never seen that little of ankle mobility in my life. Even when I beat the shit out of my ankle landing double back short, and I could barely move my ankle. I mean, he could, and I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's like I just stay on my toes. It's fine.
My ankle locks up. Like, what? That's not normal.
I didn't know what was normal and what wasn't normal, and like I avoided it so much that it didn't hurt. It was just like, oh, it doesn't work properly. That's fine. But
yeah. I just still remember times where you're just like, oh yeah, my ankle just like swells up after I work. Like these tricks are like, I take too hard of landing, because I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like your ankle's not just supposed to swell. Like,
yeah, I just didn't know. It was so early in the tricking, like in my tricking career too. I didn't even know like what was normal and what wasn't normal. I just had no concept, and I'm much better at it now. And I'm still at that weird point where I'm like, do I push through or do I not? And I just don't know. And maybe I'm at the age too where I just don't, or like I don't know.
I'm sorry. How old are you?
I'm 24, but I'm just saying, like, I guess, okay, that's the thing, not the age, but like my level of activity that I don't have choices over. I am so active with work, so because of that, an injury happens, and I'm like, well, because I have to be so active here, I need to take a break over here, which sucks. So maybe it's more something like that. But yeah, speaking of how to take a break, me putting that stress into work instead of into training because I am forced to. What are some other ways we can talk about working through an injury or healing it, or even like testing it out to see like what its limits are, to give you a good idea?
I would say usually doing very light acro stuff. So like if you're coming back from a wrist injury, granted, usually if you break it, it's usually by doctor's discretion to some degree. If you jammed it, it's usually a little bit different depending on how bad the sprain is. But like one thing that I would do, and I've done this God knows how many times for jamming around my wrist, because we all know I also don't have any wrist flexibility anymore. I would just do like a couple cartwheels, do a handstand, just kind of see how it feels. Like even just pushing down on the floor to see if it hurts too much to go through a certain range of motion, and seeing how far you can go without like overdoing it, because you can usually control it then, because it's more of a controlled environment. You're pushing down.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how more controlled it gets, but that's what I can see.
Yeah, that makes sense. Controlled movements. And then what I like to do, that makes a lot of sense for like ankles and wrists.
Oh, yes.
Like immediate injury, then you have to check it. That I think is good. Or even like if it's minor swelling, I like to stretch it. So like, for example, if my wrist swells up, then I will do those stretches in my wrist because it will actually compress the wrist because it has to go through a full range of motion, then the swelling will dissipate. So that helps. But I really like to do a run or like any muggle activity where I just go from like, because it's so hard to gauge how high intensity an acrobatic trick is, right? So it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go on the trampoline, I'm gonna do a backflip, or I'm gonna do like I've had bruised ribs. I got in a car accident, I got really bruised ribs, and I had no idea how bad it was. And so like I started to do tricks, and I was like, okay, some of these tricks work, and then I would land a trick, and I would have to flex my core to land the trick, and I would just fall over. I was like, oh, that was so bad. And I come to realize I couldn't even really run. Like I couldn't jog really because it just required me to like hold up my upper body. And I was like, I didn't even know that it was that bad. I just went straight from nothing to that. And I was like, I didn't check anything in between because you get so comfortable with the tricking skills or acrobatics or whatever it is you're doing. You get so comfortable with it. You go, well, this is supernatural. This is super normal. But you have to realize that the intensity level is still 10 times more than the other sports that exist. Like the draw on your body, like mechanics, it all needs to work together. So if there's something small that's off, it's going to make a big difference. And I think running is that low intensity thing that will let you know that, because it also requires full body mechanics. It lets you know on a smaller level, like this is your issue.
Yeah, that's true. And like we had one kid that's coming back from having stress fractures in her back bad enough where she had to be in a back brace for a while, which was really unfortunate. But she's kind of learned the hard way of like, when you land and you don't have your core squeezed, you're going to feel it. Because
oh my gosh, I was trying to teach this little kid the same thing, and he goes, it hurts my chest when I punch, like when they punch the floor. And I was like, flex your core. Yeah, he's just so like a noodle every time. Yes. I'm like, dude, hold your chin up. What are you doing? Of course it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, we have one kid who they do back handsprings and they like do this weird flex with their lower back in the middle of the back handspring.
No.
I call it it's not exactly a butt wink, but it's like they hit like good position from like belly button to shoulder, and it's like okay enough where it can be strong as long as they're pushing through the shoulder, but for some reason their hip just goes like this for like no reason. And they're like, God, my back hurts when I do back handsprings. I'm like, your back should not hurt doing back handsprings.
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing. Like, sorry. That means you're doing something wrong. Like that's not how back handsprings work. We've tried to fix it, but that's a whole different conversation. But it's like, so another thing, I guess, to go into taking injury seriously is like, if you're doing a skill and something hurts every time you do that skill, I guess this is a decent segue, there's probably something mechanically wrong. You should probably take that part seriously of like breaking down what's causing that, because it will cause an injury later on.
That's true.
Oh, I can't do this skill anymore because it hurts me. And now like it's over a long-term period of time, it's caused this issue. Now I really can't do this anymore. And it's like, you knew this in the beginning, you should have addressed it then.
Yeah, this actually ties into something very similar, is that when you're coming back from an injury, then you tend to trick differently. So for example, my hip abductor tear, my knee doesn't like to get raised directly upwards. It likes to turn in because I get to use the outside of my leg. Because so if my knee's turned in, then I get to raise my leg without engaging that part of my leg. And so it started doing that. And so I started getting pigeon-toed on my left side. And so I had to really turn my toes out and engage it. And so I'm working on like stomping my foot. And that is something I love doing in tricking all the time, is stomping. It's kind of weird, but like, it's kind of like, imagine if you're doing a body weight squat and you're like, okay, this is how I do body weight squats. And then someone tells you, you have really bad form. And they're like, how can I have bad form on a body weight squat? And then you add 300 pounds to it and you use the exact same form, you like fall over on your face. Like, I think the same thing applies to tricking. So what I like to stomp and do tricks aggressively while I'm warming up, just like going through basics, but like doing them very like mechanically strong. And so like if I'm doing J-step, for example, I will stomp my foot down really hard. I'm going through a master scoot and I will just like be super accentuated and I'll be like flexing all my muscles unnecessarily, because if I'm snapping into these positions, I'll be able to tell like, oh, I went through this motion so aggressively and it hurt this part of my body. I did something wrong. So I'll back up, I'll go through the motion slowly, and I'll go from like base form to like explosive form again, basically like recreating the muscle memory. So be like, okay,
Yeah.
this is the motion, this is the motion. And you speed it up over time until you get to that point where you can be aggressive. And so like, yeah, stomping my feet is what I'm saying. Is like, if I stomp my foot as hard as I can and I'm not pigeon-toed, it won't hurt unless of course it's injury based. But then if I'm pigeon-toed and I stomp, the power is going to be like a third, if not less, than what it normally is, and it probably will hurt something else. So I'll be like, yeah, that's not mechanically right. You can tell pretty quickly.
Yeah, I had to do the same thing when I hurt my knee. Oh my god! Well, hurt my knee, God, no, too many times. But the first time coming back from it, woo, I was so self-aware of everything I did.
Well, yeah, I mean, even like the compensation you were talking about, like where you like will lean way more on your right side than your left, or vice versa, whichever knee it is.
Yep. It is really difficult, and I warn kids about that too, because like, especially once you hurt something, it's much more likely to get hurt again, which really sucks, and it really does. But like, I've seen a kid jam an ankle; it's always the same ankle, and it's never the other ankle, no matter how hard they hit the other ankle.
Right.
I feel bad about it, but I tell them like, be conscious of it, because like you might start tumbling one direction more, or you might be leaning one way, so that's going to cause other issues during certain skills. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, with my knee, I started favoring that side. Because of that, when I started tumbling again, back when I was at Hudson, I tore my calf in half because I was taking off primarily off of one leg. So I was punching off of one leg.
Right.
And, you know, close to 200 pounds of force going in is not something to snuff at. And dogs. And I wasn't prepared for it. And it happened. And it did not feel pretty. I will tell you that now.
Yeah. And see, that goes back to the other, doing muscle exercises to let you know how your weight's distributed. That's why I love running. Like when I have ankle sprains, I'll be running and I'll be able to look at my feet and say my right ankle's bothering me. I can tell that I'm propelling significantly farther off my left, and my right is more just like a peg leg. So like my right is touching as my left is transferring again, and I'm just jumping off my left so much more than my right. I'm like, okay, I need to fix that. So like I will force it to happen, and then over time it starts to correct itself. So yeah, just things like that. Okay, so let's go into some exercises that we can do over some like what are the most injuries that you see that need to be fixed?
Triggers probably, I mean, partially the same thing as gymnasts is usually like jammed ankles. That's like the number one thing that I've seen all the time.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I do, and I will swear by it, is writing the alphabet. It's super simple.
With your ankles, yeah.
Take your toes, you take your ankle, and you write the alphabet. You do it uppercase, you do it lowercase, you do it, I know everybody probably watching this video doesn't probably know cursive, but you do it in cursive. You do all that stuff, and you just like do it like 1 to 2 times with both ankles just to make sure they're both healthy, and you just go through it because it works through all of the range of motion. It works like a little bit weirder movements, so it's making sure it's getting stronger. That is like one of the biggest things I swear by. And then the other one, which I started not that long ago to work with strengthening ankles and strengthening calf muscles. I don't have a good name for it, so I'm going to call it heel toes or like penguin walks in a way. So you start with your feet together. If you're counting my wrists as the heels and my fingers as the toes, which kind of makes sense.
Okay.
So to go forward, you go heel, toe, and that's how you
that's
go.
kind of cool. Okay.
So
you're like shuffling.
Yeah, and then backwards is toe heel. So you go forward a couple of times, then backward a couple of times. So once you want to go through as far of a range of movement as you can, turning your ankles out and turning them back in. So you're really like getting that range of movement and trying to like lift your toes up, lift your heels up really high, and like it's working so many different ways of movement within your ankle that it actually helps a lot.
That sounds really good for tricking too, because there's a lot of quick pivots, and like I even see people, the way I like to do it is like when I do aerials, I'll put my foot down sideways because it's good for balance, and then I'll turn my foot after the fact. So my foot is sideways, and then I will change my toe direction to the way that I'm going afterwards just to correct it. And even if it happens so quick, you might not even notice, or you might think of it and be changing it in the air, but you don't want to be pointing your toe the way you're going to go before you've even landed. That's not mechanically correct either. But yeah, doing what you're talking about, those quick switches in the ankles, that's probably really healthy for ankle corrections too. So like you land wrong and you correct really quickly.
Yeah, I saw it from, I get a lot of inspiration from Instagram sometimes, and I think it was like Gauge Gymnastics. I saw them doing it. It was like on ankle warm up. They did. It was just like bounce, 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 and it was like rapid fire. Some of the kids, I usually make them do it really slow to really focus on like moving the ankle all the way up, lifting their toes as high as they can. Another thing I do is I call them toe rockers. So the biggest thing you have to do, it's kind of the same concept. It's just a little bit easier to start with. You really got to focus on not letting your butt move too much. That is the biggest thing that people do. I will pop in a video here just to make this easier to understand. So you lift up your toes as high as you can while making sure your hip doesn't hinge. And then you rock forward and lift your heel up as high as it can go. And then rock back and forth, lifting your toes, lifting your heel, lifting your toes, lifting your heel.
Yeah, I can see that. So you are standing while you're doing it.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if your hip moves while doing it, it doesn't really do anything. When
you actually need that to be locked out pretty much.
Yeah, you want to actually feel the muscles that are in surrounding your shin to actually like lift your toes. Because that's what's going to be used mainly in your landing mechanics.
I do something similar, so we'll put videos to all these in here. So that you guys can actually like follow along, or maybe we'll post like a whole video on Instagram so you can like follow along with the thing. That would be good too. So what I like to do, I actually did this in my last ankle routine that we posted. So I'll go on my heels and I'll just be raising my toes like this, and I like to do it side to side like this too, because that way you're smacking all those balance muscles over and over and over. So it's the same thing but with no rest. Yeah, that feels really, really good. And then after I do that, then I'll put a 50-pound weight on my knee and I'll lean forward against the wall so that it's compressing my ankle. So it's dorsiflex to the max. Because I still have no range of motion in my ankles. So that helps a lot with that. And also, oh my gosh, this is my new thing for ankles, walking on incline. I'll put it on max incline for max incline for the treadmill, and I got new shoes. Okay, this is actually something crazy. Most shoes have they have a dip down. So like they're basically built like high heels. So it's higher in the heel and lower in the toe. And it helps you with stability, and it helps because you can adjust quicker.
Because you're on your toes.
Right, because you're on your toes. The problem with that is that you lose ankle dorsiflexion. And that's what I need so badly. And so when I went in, he goes, oh yeah, I'm sorry. The one because I have super wide feet, and because also I've been hiking barefoot, my feet are just getting wider. So, so I can't find shoes that fit. So we went through like all the wide shoes. Like, yeah, we have like none. I was like, okay. Well, he goes, good. This is the only shoe that's really going to fit you. And it still barely fits you. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. And he's like, okay, but the thing about it is it's flat from toe to heel. And I was like, really? And he's like, oh no, is that a problem? I was like, no, that's what I want. As I wanted it so bad. And it's helped me so much. And so I'm walking on incline with flat shoes. It's so good. But the thing is like, it's great. It's great. And it's funny too, because if you have that dip from heel to toe and then you're walking on an incline, it's still like you're just not getting it all. But it's not even bad for you because the cushion is in the toe too. It's not like there's no cushion. There's cushion in the toe and in the heel, but your foot is flat. And that's how you should walk. So it makes sense.
No, that is true. Like, it does make sense.
But yeah, so I love that. That's my new thing.
That is interesting. I should try that next time I go to the gym and just like walk on a treadmill at max. And God, I feel like my calves would just die. Oh, sweet Jesus.
I even rest my upper body because it's all about like to me, it's about range of motion. I'm not trying to get a workout. Yeah.
No, that's true. Okay, so I know I get you. So I mean, those are like some pretty decent ankle exercises. Another one, I don't know. I don't usually see trickers hurt their wrists or hurt their shoulders, and they usually don't really matter that much.
Surprising, right? I feel like it's mostly elbows because when they fall like this if they don't,
This is stupid. Don't do this.
I know, but it's also crazy because we're coming out of different angles. So sometimes planting an arm, I know, but then you might get a concussion. I know, but I've also separated my shoulder from falling like that.
Stupid.
I don't know. It just what happens is like when it's that quick, sometimes you don't have time, or maybe you're bouncing off of an injured, like maybe you land funny on your ankle, so you rebound off your ankle and then something else, it's just quick. It's really quick. So just because we know just because we know how to land and just because we know how to fall properly doesn't mean that improper falls don't happen. So,
I mean, that's true. You are not wrong.
well,
That's
I
how
think just
I
a general rule is whatever I injure and however I injure it, I work on the opposite range of motion. I think we've talked about this before. So if I
Yeah.
hyperextend my elbow, for example, I will do bicep curls because I stretched out my bicep.
Yep.
Right. So I need to get my bicep working again and get my elbow to be working on coming in instead of being pushed out because it got pushed out. I don't think working your tricep is a good idea because you're relaxing your bicep and everything in between.
Yep.
And doing
You're
that,
causing more stress on the
yeah,
joint.
you're causing more stress in the same way it was injured. And you're just tugging on it. It's not good. So you should work it the opposite way that it was injured. I think that is very good for it in my experience.
Yes. And another thing is kind of testing the range of motion. I almost say right away, as long as it doesn't look like it's broken.
Yeah.
Right away, kind of see how it feels, and then just kind of work from there and don't let it rest too much because, as we've said in the past, going over our old video of rice, if it works or not, and which doesn't quite work as much. Testing that motion right away and then working with it actually is a lot better. Still doing compression, doing all that stuff, it helps because it still constricts the blood flow. It makes sure that it's getting what it needs and it doesn't get too big and blah, 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 blah. But that's the biggest thing is just testing the motion right away. Just up, down, left, right, make a circle, see if it can do that. If it can, great. Then you might be fine. If it can't, might be a problem.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too is working out those muscles. That's how your body's built. Your body you work it out and then it will be like, oh, we need to heal this area. So we'll rush the healing energies that the body has to those areas. So that'll help you heal as well. Super scientific right now. And the other thing, okay, low back and neck. I think those are also very, very common.
Low back is probably because you're not doing something correctly. I'm sorry to say.
I don't know about that.
I do. Because most of them derive from not having strong enough core muscle to be doing specific exercises or flexing in the wrong way while doing certain exercises. That's the way I've come to experience back pain or have people experience back pain is because of those issues.
I don't know if it's the same or not. All of my back pain comes from a really tight butt. So like my butt cheeks get super tight and it tugs on my back. And so I have to do like I'll sit in the straddle.
Okay, well that's just like stretching. I thought you meant like injury wise. I was like injury wise.
Yeah, injury wise it's because I screw up. It's because for me it's because I probably overtrain and then I get tired and then I do tricks like a 90-year-old woman.
You foam roll your butt, man. Oh god, it hurts so good when you hit that right spot and you're just like, oh, and you hit that knot.
Sometimes things hurt so good, and that is not one of the things. I promise. It's really bad.
No, I know. I think the worst spot to foam roll is still the IT band. I think that's been like.
Oh, I actually love that.
Oh my god, I hate it so much. I have so many knots.
I don't know why. I have the spiky one, and I just send it, and I really like that.
You're a madman.
Yeah, but I can't. Does that tell you how much pain I am with my butt?
Yeah, because I think the first time I ever foam rolled my butt, that was senior year because that's when I got to do a weightlifting class, and that was like when we learned about foam rolling. Yeah, and I did it. I mean, I was like, oh my god. Yeah, it's seriously
so good. So yeah, I would say foam rolling for the back is super, super good. The other thing I love to do, I have an invert table. Love invert table. And then heat is the other thing. Anything heat. And then if heat does not work or you're having trouble stretching or being mobile, or for example, you're like cracking your back like multiple times a day, that means it's swelling. And that means you need cold ice bath time.
Well, that's interesting.
So yeah, over cracking joints is ice bath time. That's what that is, because that tells you that they're swelling.
Maybe that's why my ankles are always cracky. Oops.
That is could be. Try. Yeah, ankles are an interesting one because ankles and wrists, the way you work them out is you work those out to failure. Unlike every other muscle group, they're literally built from different muscle fibers. So I think that you also heal them differently, and that's why I think incline walking is working so well for my ankles. Ice baths never helped my ankles. I feel like it just made them more stiff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess yeah, because there's less around it, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anything else to add?
What about for the neck?
That's difficult.
Well, in
I
MMA, I'm getting a lot of badass neck ideas. So what they're saying is literally laying on your back and just looking, maxing out your range of motion both ways while laying on your back, and just going back and forth. Do like 10 to 100 of them, and then the
10 to
other
100.
thing,
That's
10
range.
to 100, whatever you feel good about. And then they have this thing where they put it around your head, and then you can do like these head things where you like
I
literally
get how it
lifting.
would work, but it looks so dumb.
It looks super dumb, but it actually is so good. The alternative to that is like light resistance with your hands. So like doing this and like
Yeah.
working your way
Pushing
back
that.
and like just working, basically working through the knots. And doing the opposite. So like you can pull this way and like stretch it and then re-engage it, but just obviously being in full control. The other thing I love to do, I'll send a video of this because it's kind of hard to explain, but basically you're on your hands and knees and then you put your head on the ground and then you roll from shoulder to shoulder while so your neck is like your chin is in your chest and you're rolling from shoulder to shoulder, upside down. And your feet
That's
are just going from side to side. That's a wrestling warm up that I did in high school when I was in wrestling for our
Yeah, I
necks.
guess the best neck stretches that we do. I've been having my kids do a lot of head rolls, so they just literally do this a couple of times both ways.
Yeah,
Just
that is seriously good. And then obviously massages for every part of your body too.
oh, massage feels great. We also do another thing that's called I know there's also not a good name for it, but we call it diddly. So you lay on your back, you literally just take your knees and you put them over your head and you pretty much just try to touch the floor by your ears or by your head.
Wow, that just sounds bad for my back.
It's really good, like upper back / neck stretch. You don't hold it very long, but it is a really good stretch. And then you can like put both knees to one side, put both knees to the other side, and like do
Ooh, I want to do that one. Knees to the sides actually sounds helpful.
it. It sucks at first because it's really hard to breathe if you're not used to it. So
Right, don't eat beforehand.
be warned. Like, you'll feel like you're suffocating. If you feel like you can't breathe, just come
Then
out of it.
don't.
Don't breathe. Like you'll
Then
be
don't breathe.
fine.
Yeah, you don't
Heard
need
it
to
here
breathe.
first. You'll be fine. Don't breathe. Breathing's for wimps.
Agreed.
God.
But
I don't think I have anything else for neck rehab. That's my hard part. Is like I don't have a lot of kids that neck skills.
well, yeah, but it's less about like necking skills. I don't know. When I first started tricking, I had a lot of neck pain from like aggressively looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Or like I think also landing poorly. So I would even land on my feet, I would get like whiplash, or like something else when I was first learning ball outs on trampolines. So like you jump over and you land on your back and you rebound off your back. I would just be
Yeah.
landing just a bit short. My neck was just taking some of that hit.
Yeah.
So but just like all the repetition, they add up. So I would get really sore neck because of that.
No, that makes
Um,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, and then now I definitely do because of fighting. People are
Yeah.
chugging on my neck all the time. I'm done with it.
Head gets blown off and spun in 360. Just gotta
People grab my
bring it
head
back.
and they pull it down so they can throw knees to the face. And so I'm just like, no.
Fight it.
Yeah, so 2 arms against 1 neck. It's a lot. So I've been doing the neck rehab like crazy. But yeah, especially for neck rehab, ice. But you know how I feel about ice. Just ice baths. Ice doesn't work. It has to be a full body thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. It should just be a full body experience and just go do it.
Yeah, and
Don't suck. Just
how
do
do
it.
you feel about chiropractors?
I hate them.
I
It's
know.
always been my personal stance. I feel like a lot of them spout some BS about what they can fix and what they can't fix. And I'm like, all right, like you're cracking my joints. Like, yeah, it helps. But if I
Yeah.
have to keep coming back to you for 8 months, are you sure you're doing something right? Like, I mean, I don't know any chiropractors personally. I've never talked to them. I've never looked into it. I just really don't believe it because I'm like, they're cracking your joints and they're not really like fully resetting things.
Yeah,
Like,
and that makes sense, but it's the same idea, I think, as a massage. I think a
yeah,
chiropractor is the same as a massage. Like oh, you went to the massage ones, you never have to go again, like
Yeah.
you do, and I think the chiropractor, the thing I don't like about it is that generally everything that a chiropractor can do to me, I can do to myself. I can get myself through those full ranges of motion, but that's what they're doing is they're basically putting you through a full range of motion. So
Yeah.
I
And
think it is helpful, especially for things like the neck. If you're definitely struggling with an injury, you can't necessarily put yourself through a full range of motion, so that's helpful. But I've
yeah.
never gone to one consistently.
And that's the thing, like I think they can be helpful to a degree, but when you have that chiropractor that says like, oh yeah, we'll be able to fix your seizures. This is oh yeah, we'll be able to realign your back. Like, shut the fuck up.
Right?
Like,
Like there are limits. I think it is a positive. I just think it's not a cure all either.
no.
I think everyone's had bad experiences with them. When I had that ankle injury, I wasn't sure what was going on. This was right after I had torn the ligament, and I go in and I went to the chiropractor, and I was like, because he was certified in a lot of things. He had like a lot of doctor things. I knew
Yes,
them
you're right.
personally. Yeah, so like he can tell me what it is, even if he doesn't fix it. He was tugging on that shit. He thought I had a jammed ankle. I had a
Come to
torn
find out.
ligament. Yep. Yeah, I found out. I was like, yeah, we need to stop. That's not helping. but
Yeah.
but
Whoops.
yeah, overall, I think it is a positive along with all the other things. Otherwise, it wouldn't still be around, if it wasn't helping
Yes.
people. But yeah, I mean that's all I got to help people out. Take them seriously, even the best you can. I know none of us want to stop.
Especially like if it's on your pain threshold, like if there's allowable pain that you're at like a 1 or a 2, and it's creeping up on that 5, I'd probably think twice about it. That's usually
Yep.
what I tell my kids. I'm like, if it's at like a 3 or 4, and if it's just like a mild pain, like, you probably could work through it and it's not that bad. But if it's encroaching on that 5, 6 range, you might think twice about how that is.
And it's always safer to stop for 1 day, stop for 2 days, stop for 7 days than it is to have to stop for 6 months to a year.
Yeah. God,
Yeah.
yes.
There's some names I want to say, but we won't. All right. Well, see you guys next time.
See you next time.
Don't forget to follow us on the_flip_side_podcast on Instagram.
And CHRISPY_TRIX. That's chrispy-trix on Instagram. And I also have another YouTube channel, TrixFix, TRIX space FIX, for more tutorials and other things.
And we'll see you guys next time.